I'd like to welcome everybody to Taking the Essence. The mind is the creator of our experiences. This is our second day, our second time we've met out of 4. And Eddie Peet is our instructor today. He has been teaching at Langri Tapa Center since 1997, and he is a registered Western teacher within the FMP and has attended the study programs in Buddhist philosophy and practice. Thank you, Eddie.
Thank you, Shayla. Hi, everybody, and welcome along to the second class of Mind is the Creator of Experience. I think I'll go to the actual share screen and start up. And then so what we'll do is we'll say a few prayers together, and then we'll actually begin the teaching. So I'll just go to the share screen now. Yep, so here we are, second class. And this is so we've got a couple of prayers to do. And so before we do them, sort of just think about why you're attending the class. So in other words, remind yourself of what you intend to do with this knowledge. And once you've reminded yourself of the motive for being here, then think that you're surrounded by all sentient beings. And all these people are sitting on the ground. And above them and above yourself are all the enlightened beings, all the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas. So you're in the company of the enlightened beings and the sentient beings, and you have a purpose for being there. And to accomplish that purpose, we're going to take refuge in the teachers who have attained enlightenment, the teachings that bring about enlightenment, and the community of enlightened beings. And we're going to take refuge and generate a mind of enlightenment verbally, and we're going to just say it in English together. So we'll say it 3 times together. So I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. Now to sort of strengthen this aspiration, recollect whatever you can remember about the 4 immeasurable thoughts. So these are thoughts that are rooted in great compassion, great love, great immeasurable love, joy, and equanimity. I think that you're not just wishing that others have these immeasurable qualities, but that you yourself will help them to have immeasurable equanimity, love, compassion, and joy. Then recollect that to become fully awakened for the benefit of others, you need to sort of abandon everything that hinders your goal and accumulate all the causes and conditions that will eventuate in the enlightenment that you're seeking. So we need to abandon such things as miserliness and pride, generate the opposites of those. So we need to acknowledge that, and then to help us achieve great enlightenment for the benefit of others, we're going to make an offering now to the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas who are above and in front of us. And so this way of saying it is on the next slide. So here's the mandala offering. For this ground, anointed with perfume, strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, 4 continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha field and offer it. May all living beings enjoy this pure land. Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kamnayatayami. So we release the offering and imagine that the Buddha looks directly at us and we look up and look into his eyes. And those eyes are kind and accepting. And we feel good to be in the presence of the Buddha. Then think that the vast field of enlightened beings begins to dissolve into light, all melting into the central figure of Shakyamuni Buddha. And an emanation leaves his heart, moves through space, and comes to abide above the crown of your head. The emanation descends, entering your skull, coming down to the level of your heart. We begin where the radiance begins to expand, filling your body and mind. The light goes out through the pores of your skin, fills the 10 directions of space. And wherever there are beings within space, think that they're touched by that light. And they all take on the appearance of enlightenment itself. And from here, there's no difference between yourself and anyone. The thought arises, I can't just stay in this peaceful state. I'm sworn to achieve enlightenment for the benefit of others. So I need to help them. And in dependence upon these thoughts, all the light begins to withdraw and re-enter your heart. You find yourself sitting on your seat, breathing normally and naturally, embodied. And again, you awaken your intention to free everyone from suffering and its causes and help them to develop their fullest potential as fully awakened beings. I think, yep, that's why I'm here. That's why I'm undertaking these courses. That's why I'm engaged in the study of the Buddha's teachings. And now breathe in deeply through your nostrils. And exhale. And allow your eyes to flutter open if they're closed. And move your body in whichever way you'd like to feel quite comfortable in your seat. And feel ready to engage in the teachings. Okay, so today we're going to talk again a little bit more about perception, but this time we're going to look at how perception could be an aid for discontent, being more upset, or how it could be an aid for actual practice. So I'm going to begin this class with an overview, a very brief overview of what we looked at last week, and then I'll pause for a moment and ask you if you've sort of been thinking about this during the week. And if you have been, what has arisen for you? So if you'd like to share that, go ahead. If nothing has arisen, that's fine. We'll just move on to the next part and continue on with the class. Then we're going to have a look at mental perception. So you know that last week we looked at sense perception, what we see through the eyes, what we can hear through the ears, and so forth. There's another type of perception also, which you might not be aware of. It's called mental perception. We're going to have a look at 3 types of mental perception. And then I want to introduce you to the meaning of the word conventional. Now, the purpose for doing that is to acknowledge how things conventionally exist and how you can behave in response to this knowledge, which leads us to these responses that can either provide more discontent or how they can help us in the practice. So we'll look at different ways through the method and through the wisdom that we can engage with to help us there. Now, just like last week, I'll show you the type of material I've been relying upon. So of course, I'll be relying upon a number of different books and also the different teachings that our teachers have taught us. So let's have a look at the books now. So here again, we have 5 books. And the 2 new ones, the 2 different ones are Insight into Emptiness and Essence of the Heart Sutra. And that's just because we're going to be bringing in some of the perspectives of wisdom into how to relate to our perceptions. And we want to do that to increase our happiness and to decrease the states of discontent. Whereas the other 3 books, they're more on the method side. So they're really dealing with perception itself, how we see, how we think in response to what we're seeing, and so forth. Now, if you've had some teachings on the topic of emptiness, I cannot recommend highly enough this particular book by Khenso Jumpa Tekchog. I say that because the way it's written is the way that most of the Galupa Geshis speak. So you get really an introduction into that way of talking and into the terms. And that'll help you a great deal when you actually hear teachings on emptiness. Otherwise, it can be seen a little bit of a shock when you hear a lot of different words and terms, you've got no idea what they mean. Essence of the Heart Sutra, of course, commentary here by His Holiness the Dalai Lama. I'll be using that in explaining how we can use the wisdom here, in particular by recollecting what they call the 4 profundities. You know, you probably know all this when it goes, form is empty, emptiness is form. Those are 2 of the profundities. Emptiness is not other than form, form is not other than emptiness. So we can use that in terms of helping us deal with the different types of perceptions we have, how we see things, how we hear things. So what's the takeaway? Well, I hope it'll be that you have more wisdom. You'll come away knowing that everything that does exist does so because it depends upon something else. And if it does depend upon something else, which it does, you'll understand that it's empty of any intrinsic existence. And that won't stop you clinging to the ideas that although things appear truly from their own side, inherently and so forth, that they actually don't. And so that will put a brake on the clinging. The other things I'm going to do is introduce to you a number of different skillful methods that you could use. So if you can't draw on the wisdom, you may be able to draw on something. So in this case, it'll be some sort of method. And in that, you'll be able to withdraw your senses, for instance, replace them with something else and then do something else. So I hope that this will be the takeaway that you can use. So now let's have a quick review of what we looked at last week. So remember we had this process of visual perception, and I presented from the Western point of view and a Buddhist point of view. And both points of view are made up of 3 parts. So the first part is that to see anything, you need light. Without light, we're not going to be able to see. And that's where the Western presentation begins. We have light and it's presented from the point of view of physics. So he talked about the different photons or waves of light. The Buddhist presentation, we just call this the common condition, and that is light. So we have a meeting ground right there. The second part is that we need it for human beings. We need the human biology, which means you need an eyeball, you need an optic nerve, you need the cones in your eyes, you need a brain. All of these things are necessary for you to see anything. The Buddhist presentation is a bit different. They call this the eye sense power, and that's what you need. And they talk about being a subtle type of form. And so this subtle type of form is not the eyeball. It won't be the optic nerve, won't be those things. But nevertheless, it's something that's not so obvious to us as the eyeball and the optic nerve, something physical.
So Eddie, are you saying that it is physical, but it's on a much more subtle level, like neurons firing in your brain?
No, that's the way that that's the way we could look at it from a Western perspective, but it's even more subtle than that. So
Okay.
it is what they call, form, but doesn't possess form. But don't get your head wrapped around that, because it'll make it all difficult for you. Just know that there are different presentations, but they're going to get at the same thing. And finally, in the West, you can't rule out mind. So mind is there. And that way they describe it through psychology. And Buddhism calls it the immediate condition is a mental consciousness. Without the mental consciousness to engage with the eye sense power, you're not going to be able to see anything. So slightly different presentations, but acknowledge that both have three major conditions needed for perception, visual perception in this case, to arise. And if you do want more information on this or to understand it more deeply, then one of the books that was back there on the other slide would help you to do that. And that's the one on science and philosophy in Indian Buddhist classics by His Holiness the Dalai Lama. The big thick one on the end there. So here we have these three ways, Western Buddhist, three conditions necessary to see anything. Now, where they both agree is that objects and light are not by themselves colored. So I asked you last week, with this type of knowledge, as you go through the week, look around at things. We walk around with our eyes open. So colors are appearing to us all the time. What stood out for you, if anything, with this new knowledge, that the objects and the light themselves don't have the color? So when you're ready, just wave your hand if you have your screen up and say something. Otherwise, you'll be quiet and then we'll move on.
Who's going to be the first to wave? I've got a story, Eddie, about it struck me last week when you're talking about it. Years ago, when Langri Tama Center was still in my mother's house, and Kathy, you might have been around then. We were going to paint the walls of the Gompa, and so the lamas always say it's great to have kind of yellow butter colored walls because it means auspiciousness. And so we went down to the hardware shop and looked at the color and found this nice yellow, not too acidic, a little bit old-fashioned to match the house. Yep, it took us hours. We went back, 6 of us, I don't know how many, painted all the walls, and then sat down and looked around, and it was like we're in the middle of a great big baby poo. It was the most awful yellow in the world. And we're like, what happened? So we had to go back to the shop and in desperation going, help me. Luckily, it was an old-fashioned hardware shop. And so they mixed up, they put heaps of black into it. Then we came back and painted it, and it was this nice old-fashioned in keeping color, but it was very traumatic to go through.
Sue, did anything pop up for you? Sue Wall, did anything during the week when you looked at the colours that surround you?
I thought it was putting the emphasis back on me, like from the explanation that you gave. And experientially, I suppose that was all conceptual, just thinking, oh, well, okay, it's not all out there. Yeah, and I did have a question, Eddie. With the three, the common, the uncommon, and the immediate mental consciousness.
Yeah.
With the immediate one, is that always conceptual or perceptual for perceptual?
I'm not sure. So I think it can go, it can be, if you move into the conceptual, then it's conceptual. It'll be the moment that leads into the thinking. Right. It's the last moment of the perception. And then when you start to think, now it becomes the immediate condition for the conception.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. And so just perhaps there's a lot to think about once you start realizing that the color's not out there. Like, for instance, if you just put your hand up to look at your own skin and think the color's not there. Now, you can't see your own body without the color of it. And without the shape of your body, the color is not going to appear to you. So color and shape are highly interdependent. If people didn't have shape, possess the quality of shape, I mean, how would you know that there was a person there? Because, you know, like looking at each of you there, and you're looking at me, it's the shape distinguishes the difference between me, the foreground, and the background of the bookcases, doesn't it? It's only because I've got this shape that it contains this color, and you can distinguish these colors that I've got, my skin color, my t-shirt, to the background. So I did this little exercise during the week of going, yeah, well, what if I just, you know, okay, so the color of my skin is arising dependent upon the light, the object of this body, and visual consciousness, isn't it? The three conditions. If those conditions are all not there, any one of them moved out, you're not going to be able to perceive any color. Then think about how you perceive yourself whenever you look in the mirror. You're looking at the color and shape. When you see others, what do you see? What's appearing to your vision is color and shape, movement. And then what arises? Independence upon that. Independence upon seeing the color tones of people's flesh of your own.
So, Eddie, when you're saying that, it really becomes apparent to me that so much of what we see actually is just based on color and shape, but the main experience that we have is the mental experience of experiencing our idea of the person, whether we like them or dislike them, what, you know, race, nationality they are, all of those things. Even though physically our experience is color and shape, what's actually happening is completely different.
That's right. A lot more happens just in the color and shape, but actually color and shape and movement, that's all it's really the eye is accessing. But then it depends upon what Miffy pointed out, and as you all know, when I said, think about what's happening, right? Then ideas pop up. So all these ideas are called conceptions. And that's what we're going to be talking about next week. A little bit about it this week. But here we're still going to focus on the perception and how that leads into all these, the thinking, the conceiving, the naming. Because with your perceptions, there's no naming process there. There's no conceptual process there. That arises in dependence upon the perception. There is after the perception, in other words.
Eddie, could you repeat that again?
No, Kath. This comes out of my mouth and it's gone. But no doubt it's on the recording, so you'll be able to pick it up when you want to watch it again. Okay, so I just want you to think about this stuff because it's relatable. I mean, the Dharma, the Buddha's teaching us is about us. It's about how we live in this world, how we create suffering in dependence upon ideas that we have. And a lot of the ideas are arising independent from what we perceive. And actually to get rid of the deepest suffering we have depends upon perception. It will not be, we cannot get rid of it through our thinking processes. That's why perception is very important. So I'll move on and then we'll have a look at these other forms of perception. So, like, during the week, Miffy and I watch television, of course. So I'm not, I keep joking. I said, it just keeps looking like all the colors coming from the TV. But if you went right in the TV, all you'd find are those three things that they use for the color: red, green, and something else. Right? That's all that's actually there. And all the colors, they're not there. So last week, perception using the senses, eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, but the major one we focused on was visual awareness. Now we're going to have a look at mental awareness. So now mental awarenesses, we could probably ask what are they? The one that we are most familiar with and that we're using all the time is the ability to think. Just conception, that's a mental awareness. And these others that I'm going to introduce you to are not that. So mental awarenesses can be either conceptual, like I was saying, thinking, or non-conceptual, so not thinking. We can still engage different types of objects. Now, the practice of meditation itself depends almost entirely upon mental awareness. And like I said, that can be conceptual. Like as you go through the stages of the path, there's a lot of thinking that you need to do, a lot of material you read, and you have to think about it. And this is basically because, you can't meditate with your sense awarenesses. You don't meditate with your eye, your ear, your nose, your tongue, or your body. You meditate with your mind. So we meditate with the mind, then we can either do it conceptually or non-conceptually. I think that's enough. That'll do. And then we'll, yes, Miffy.
Miffy, you'll have to
I
unmute.
can't hear you, Miffy.
Sorry. With non-conceptual, is that something an experience like, say, if you're watching dance or, you know, ballet, and you have a really intense experience, but it's not verbal, even though you might have a recognition of what they're saying?
Well, it's hard to say that using that example. That could be a conceptual or a non-conceptual. So the simple way of thinking about like what we mean by, so examples of non-conceptual awareness are, for instance, vision, hearing. Because hearing and vision, you don't think, you just see clearly. Right? It just apprehends it straight off. When you bring thinking in, then it's conceptual. So what's being said here is that the mind itself can do this. The mind can know things, not through thinking.
So when you say thinking, do you also mean emotions, or is it just dialogue? Like, is it experience? Is that what
Yeah,
encompasses
that's an
by thinking?
experience. It's an experience.
Okay.
Just as like visual, you know, visual experience, you don't need words or names to be able to see something.
Yeah.
And so there are like three types that we can talk about. So types of mental perception. So the first one is called a direct mental perception. So here, this is remember this is not, it is not conceptual. So you're not thinking, it's not arising and depends upon names. You're seeing something clearly with your mind. It's not visual. And so the examples I give of this are different forms of clairvoyance. Now, to have these types of clairvoyance arise, you need to have a really deep state of concentrated awareness. And so all the clairvoyances that I've read of arise in dependence upon the development and cultivation of calm abiding. So as anyone knows about calm abiding, you know you go through the 9 mental stages, and calm abiding is after the 9. It's a not a desire realm awareness. And independent upon having that, you can see past lives. You can see events that are going to happen into the future. You can see things that are happening far away. Now, this might seem a little bit magical thinking, but in fact, the United States government spent millions of dollars in the 60s training people up to have clairvoyance to see what the Russian submarines were doing. So this phenomenon does exist. But to have it, like I said, you've got to have developed a very deep state of concentration. And remember here, you're not seeing with your eyes, and yet the image appears very clearly to your mind. You see something, you know something. So that's one type of mental perception. And like I said, it's highly dependent, it's often an outcome of a state of like calm abiding. And calm abiding, remember, isn't purely a Buddhist practice.
Eddie, this often happens too when someone really close to you passes away. They might be on the other side of the world, and people wake up and just know, oh, they've gone. I mean, that you hear that a lot.
Yes. Yeah. Now here's the next one called Yogic direct perceiver. And we need yogic direct perceivers to realize emptiness directly. But yogic direct perceivers aren't just focused on the emptiness of all phenomena. You need them to also discover, for instance, subtle impermanence. And once again, it's developed in dependence upon the development of calm abiding. And the third type of mental perception is dream awareness. So in dreams, so some of you might have had dreams like this where they are so clear and you see everything with your mental awareness, right? It's not you're not dreaming with your eyes awake and it's right there in front of your eyes. Your eyes are closed. And so you see dream mountains that appear as if they are actual mountains. Sometimes you can even have, as some of you might have done, have dreams where you meet your teacher and they talk to you, they tell you stuff. You know, it's a little bit shocking when it happens. Like you wake up in the morning, you haven't forgotten that. Yeah. So these are the three types of mental perception. The most important one for us is yogic. You know, because without it, we can't have a direct perception of emptiness. And of course, you can see here that this yogic direct perception arises on the path of seeing. You don't have it before it. Because like I said, it's a direct perception of the empty nature of all phenomena. So I just want to say a little bit more about this yogic direct perceiver, and then we'll move on to something else. So here we go. This is why they're important. Without it, we cannot access emptiness directly. And we need to do that to actually get rid of all the causes of our suffering, which are the clinging to inherent existence and the different types of behaviors and afflictions that arise in dependence upon it. We've got to see directly that what we thought is true, isn't true. Rafi, you were going to say something?
I was just thinking that often when I start hearing these quite complex terms, there's a little part of my mind that says, oh, that's too hard for me. I'm just going to stay with the basic stuff. But when you actually say this, without this, we can't attain a liberation. It's like, oh, I can't put it in the too hard basket anymore.
Yeah. So, for all of us, well, I can't say for all of you, but I can say for myself, right? And I don't have a yogic direct perceiver. I don't have clairvoyance, but I do dream occasionally and see things quite clearly. The thing is, how do I put this information into practice when I don't have any of it? It's just like Miffy's saying, otherwise it's just like information, and okay, and then I forget, but I can't do anything with this knowledge. Because there's definitely something we can do about not having yogic direct perceivers and making our way towards actually having them. Now, so suppose we want to develop a yogic direct perception of emptiness. So the first thing we have to do is understand what the term means. So that means that's conception, isn't it? We're saying, look, I don't know about this emptiness stuff. What do you mean? And then you say, well, I'm talking about not just not there, not just the negation, not complete absence of everything. I'm talking about the absence of inherent existence. Then your next question might be inherent existence. I've never heard of it. Like what's that? And here's something you can use. It's supposed to, well, when you're just looking there at colors and looking at the world, and the color seems to be over there, that's the appearance of inherent existence. The objects have the qualities. It's not coming from us, it's over there. And then, the next person go, well, isn't it over there? And the other go, oh, no. It looks like it is, but it's not. And I said, what do you mean? How do you know that? So look, here's the scientific presentation. Here's the Buddhist presentation. It's not there. But it seems to be there. And that's called inherent existence. That's the appearance of inherent existence. And not only that, everything that you perceive with your ordinary senses will appear that way. So there's a dualism in play. There's me and the world, and we're separate and different. So there's the appearance of inherent existence. then you say, well, what do I do with that knowledge? So, well, in the beginning, it's really surprising. In the beginning, they say it's best to work with yourself rather than the phenomena of the world. And so, what do you mean? So, well, you've got a sense of self, haven't you? Yeah, yep. So, well, are you your body? And then they sort of go, I don't know. So, well, you are or you're not. There's no middle way here. And you'll find, with a little bit of questioning, you'll find that sometimes you think you are your body and other times you think you're not. And you say, okay, so now let's have a look at when you're not. You're not dependent upon your body. There's inherent existence again. So you're either the same as or you're completely different. And both views are views of inherent existence. And we're saying neither of those views is true. They're both false. So we sort of go through it like that, and so we try and get like an understanding, and we listen to other teachers, we read books, and we get it together in a way that's similar to what I'm saying. So you can talk to yourself and you understand what you're talking about. And then you start playing around with it. You start saying, well, okay, I'm sitting on my chair. Is the body also on the chair? Yep, yes it is. Are you the same as the body? You've only got two answers, yes or no. So the first thing is you start saying yes, because later on you're going to say no. So the first thing is go, I'll just say yes then. And then you see what happens if you say yes. And if you say no, so no, I'm not the same as my body. And you go, why not? And you'll have the answer. You say, well, because I'm just imputed to the body. I'm not the body, I'm imputed to it. And you have to sort of like know what that means, And then you go, okay, well then if you're not, then throw yourself off the chair. And then what's on the chair? And what will appear to your mind is nothing, right? But what's actually there's an absence. There's no body on the chair. Right? Now that absence, that is it's a correct conceptual understanding that the body is empty of inherent existence. But when you look at your mind to see that empty, it's a conception. But you need that to start with. And then you keep on doing it over and over again, but concentrate deeper. Have a look at other explanations, try and do it, but bring it back into experience. And in that way, you put a foundation under the experience of having a yogic direct perception. Like I said, the empty chair that will arise in your mind is the very rough generic image of the emptiness of inherent existence of the body. Right? Like if you say, I'll throw myself off the chair, then you look at the chair in your mind, there's nobody there. Correct. So the body lacks inherent existence. What's appearing is a generic image of emptiness. And then if you said, well, how about I throw my body off the chair? What's on the chair? You also get like a vacuity, an emptiness. Right? And on that knowledge, you'll know, my gosh, I don't inherently exist. Because if I did, I would be on the chair and my body would be on the floor. Right? So we play around with it. And in that way, we become familiar and knowing, one day, if I get it deep enough, I'm going to see it directly. It'll give me, even conceptually, you get a bit of a shock doing something like this, right?
Well, Eddie, conceptually, you kind of think like this and you start kind of driving yourself crazy, but actually we're already crazy because this is how we automatically think. So no wonder we're in such a mess.
So now what I want to do is to bring to your awareness the idea of what we mean by this word convention. This word is very important because you'll come across it often in the text when you talk about conventional truth. What's the conventional nature of the person? And so forth. Right? So I want to bring it to your attention so that you know that there are at least 3 meanings to this term and how you can integrate these meanings when you look out at the blue of the sky, the color of your skin. When you look at it and see, when you engage with any object that conventionally exists. And what I hope to do by doing this, so you can actually get your head around dependent and empty, not dependent and inherent, because that's what it looks like. So let's move on to the next slide. So the first meaning of convention is by agreement. In other words, you're saying you just agree to something. So what could we agree with about this picture here? We could agree, for instance, that looks like a woman holding a baby. Do you agree? You'd probably go, yeah, sort of, yeah, okay, I can accept that. Yeah. We might ask, yeah, what sort of people are they? You would say, well, they look Aboriginal people, people from Australia, native Australians. And we would probably agree. So a convention just means that we agree to call particular leaves green. This shade of the sky, that one. So this should be really easy to accept for you, is it? Does anyone find this hard to agree with? A convention, it's just something, you know, named and agreed to. For instance, another example I'll give you is, you know, astronomers look out into the sky and they find stars and planets that have never been seen before. Now, as soon as they see them and it's never been seen before, what do you think they do?
Name it.
That's right, excellent. That's right, they name it, right? And then no one else has seen this, so everyone agrees. It's as simple as that. Sometimes I just give them numbers, and then later on they'll give it a name. They'll turn the number over and go, let's give it this name. I found it, I want it named after me. And everybody goes, yeah, okay. Yeah, so that's the first word by convention. It's a naming and an agreeing. And in this case, I've made the example of going, let's call this baby Wally. Yeah? And when we meet this, if we ever met this mother of her child, she'd say, we say, oh, nice baby, what's its name? She'd say, Wally. And we'd all go, oh, there's Wally. We all agree. Her husband agrees. The rest of the family all agree. This baby is called Wally. It might not have been, no. Isn't that the case, eh? Maybe they go, oh, no, I don't like the name Wally. Let's call it Dave. And they call it Dave, and then everybody agrees. No, that's just how it works. We just name things and we agree. So that's one meaning of the word convention. Now, can you take this back to, like I said before, about color? When the color appears out there, nearly everyone in the world will agree, yeah, it's out there, won't they? It's just by agreement. Yet when we investigate from a scientific point of view or a Buddhist view, we go, actually, it's not out there. I can't agree with it. It's not out there. It's just, but you could say it's a convention, but it's not true. Is that okay with you? This is called blue. We all agree there. But if you go further than that, we might say, no, I disagree now. Which leads us to the next thing, conventional nature. So conventional nature is talking about how does this phenomena conventionally exist? How does the fellow called Wally exist? He exists by being dependent and merely labeled. So merely labeled is the easy bit here. It's Wally, right? It's the name that we gave to the baby. He's kept it on through his life. Now he's a young man. He's called Wally. And later on, he might change his name to be Dave, like I said before. Now he's not Wally, he's Dave. He used to be called Wally, but he's David now. It's just called Dave or Wally. Right? So there's the merely labeled, the name. Now that name, of course, depends upon the body of Wally, doesn't it? Without a body there, there's no Wally. So some of the different dependencies, and that's why I said, so, you know, without the body, you go, hey, Wally. But what's he dependent upon? So there we can look at different forms of dependency. And the simple ones, the most simplest of all is causes and conditions. So we can look at what are the physical causes and the mental causes for this fellow called Wally. Well, the physical causes, of course, are two other human beings have to meet, have sex, and mother's going to become pregnant. So we've got what they call, you know, the sperm and the blood have to meet, mother gets pregnant. These are all physical causes, aren't they? Man and a woman, the physical substances. Yeah, no, that's great, causes, done. What about the mind? What's the cause of mind? So you know, okay, well, that can't be mum, that can't be dad, that doesn't make sense. So we've got to find, okay, so then we go, well, mind, does mind change? Is it a product? Yeah, yep, must depend upon causes and conditions. So we can say, okay, then the mind is also dependent. And without a mind, this fellow called Wally wouldn't be called Wally anymore, would he? What would he be called?
A corpse.
A corpse. That's right.
That's right.
Wally's
He'd
dead.
be called the urn on the mantelpiece.
That's right. There's Wally. That's right. So we definitely need causes and conditions. And some of the conditions for Wally, of course, are air, light. Because if you don't have light, we can't see Wally. Food, there's millions and millions of different conditions that are necessary for the existence of Wally. Now, Wally has parts. Some of the parts are his name, his body and his mind, of course. You can go into each of those and find, wow, the mind is made up of all these different parts. The body itself is made up of all these different parts. There's all these parts together. And having them all together and functioning is what's called the basis for designating Wally, the name. We put the name on all the parts that are functioning in dependence upon the cause and conditions and so forth. So there we have Wally, depends upon cause and conditions, parts, basis of designation, and the name. So that's how he conventionally exists. It's okay? Okay, now comes the next interesting one. Here's Wally at the beach. And now we're going to be talking about the conventional truth nature of Wally. So Wally exists as a conventional truth. It's conventionally true that Wally exists and has this name and appears in front of us. But to apprehend Wally, like to see this picture of Wally at the beach, what's that depend upon?
Three
Having
coming
light.
together.
Sorry? Sue, you said?
Three coming together, the light, our uncommon.
Yep, a
And
common. So
the-
we've actually got to have eyeballs to see him. We've got to have the light. We've got to bring those three conditions back in, don't we? To see Wally. Now, so that means conventional awareness, ordinary eye awareness. Ordinary eye awareness, the light and the biology of ourselves is necessary for us to engage in this picture of Wally. Now, remember, I don't know, I've said this before, but I'll say it now, is that every conventional consciousness you have presents the world to you as if the objects exist independent of you, inherently. So Wally naturally appears to you as if he has an inherent existence, which in fact he doesn't. Just like the blue appears to exist from the side of the sky, the green from the side of the leaf, the color of your skin from the skin. It's a natural occurrence. And every conventional cognizer we have, meaning eye sense awareness, hearing, taste, presents every object to you in this false way. So a conventional truth is true from the perspective of a true grasping mind. Now, you can ask, does my eye awareness grasp at this appearance? And the answer is no. It's your, what we call the conceptions. It's the thinking that grasps.
So, Eddie, when you say grasp, is that like we think they exist from over there? We also assume that they're permanent.
So the grasping here means the belief. You believe that the appearance is, what's appearing to you is true. So it appears true because that's just the way, the natural way your senses bring in the data. It always looks inherent existent. It always looks existing from its own side. We can't stop that. As you're probably aware, even 10th ground bodhisattvas, when they come out of their meditative equipoise on emptiness, they're back in the world. Hello, the world looks as if it inherently exists. That's just the way it appears to our senses. Do they believe it? No way. They've seen that that Wally lacks inherent existence because he dependently exists, which is the second slide we showed you that you had a look at. You cannot dependently exist and at the same time inherently exist. They're opposites. So you can have the appearance of inherent existence, which will happen to us all the time, and the non-belief in it. So not grasping at it to be true, even though it appears true. We don't grasp, we don't cling. It just looks true. And we can go, wow, it's pretty amazing, isn't it? It looks like, wow, it all looks true and it's not. We can talk to ourselves like that and have a little giggle, just to stop jumping in there and believing. It's the conception, it's the thinking that goes, it's true. And so now we cling to the images that truly exist. And we can say that, and for just a straight up example of this, we say, well, where's Wally? And we go, there he is. And what do we point to? Wally's body. Wally and the body are the same thing. They're inherent. It's what it looks like, it's how we speak, it's what most people believe. That Wally doesn't exist like that. Now, when we sort of believe what we're seeing, it's like Biffy said, right? We believe what we see. Seeing is believing. When we get locked in like that, we create discontent for ourselves. Like, why? Because they actually don't exist in the way we see them. That's not actually how they exist. And so our thinking that something is true is continually let down by the actual truth. But no, that's not true. You think it's true, but it's not true. So we create discontent for ourselves. Now, how do we do this? By clinging to the objects of the senses as if they did exist in the way they're appearing to us. So the different terms you'll come across, especially in the presentation of the Galupa teachers, you get these different terms. They appear to exist from their own side. So even this picture here, yeah. So it's actually a picture, isn't it? What do you think? It's a picture, isn't it?
Oh,
When you
man,
first look at it, what pops into your mind?
real people.
Real people. That's right. There's 3 real people there. Oh my God, there's a white woman. She's sort of semi-naked. There's these black guys over her. That's what pops up, right? The conception just overwhelms the appearance. And so then we get these little terms like from their own side. It's true. You know, we get all these ideas about the relationship between black people and white people. What am I actually looking at here? What's this mean? All this stuff, conceptual. This picture doesn't need any naming process. What I'm saying is true. By way of its own character means there's no need to name this stuff. It's already known. And of course, inherently means it exists. It could exist like that without any dependence upon awareness at all. But I'm going to use these. I'll come back to these 4 terms in another slide very shortly, and I can show you a bit more about this information. So some of you might know that this picture I put up here was in the middle. Here's the actress called Charlotte Gainsbourg, and so she's in a very sort of like, I can't say it's outrageous, but it's a film made in 2013 by a guy called Lars von Trier. And Lars von Trier is renowned for putting up material that'll sort of shock you and make you think a great deal. What was particularly good about this film was about this woman who, can I say, had the deep idea that you could be happy through sex. That sex could make you happy. And of course, it did provide some happiness, but then the happiness would go. And so as the film moved on, it became more and more and more extreme. And from a Dharma point of view, it's really interesting to watch something like this. But now the one that's just like it, but from the point of view of the men, was a movie called Hurly Burly. And Miffy and I went to see that. It only had 2 other people in the theatre other than us. And when I went to the loo, when we went out, 2 of the women, there's only 2 other women watching it, they went off to the loo, and they really didn't like this film. It was like rubbish and da-da-da. And it was like, wow, you didn't get it, did you? And it was like, no matter what these men did to be happy through their reliance on the senses and believing that things intrinsically existed, they were continually disappointed, just like this woman. And this was the movie was about, the disappointment that naturally comes about when you think your senses can provide you with the happiness you're seeking.
Eddie, it's like an inconvenient truth, isn't it? And
Yeah.
so people didn't like the movie because they
This is
didn't
true.
like the revelation.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But
Yeah,
actually, I've got to say, Hurly Burly's really funny, and we were the only people laughing in the theatre, me and Eddie, because it's black humour. But don't let it put you off seeing the movie. It's brilliant.
And this particular movie wasn't funny. Yeah. So now, like I said, so our culture, our media, encourage us to rely upon our senses and to possess the objects of our senses to bring about the happiness that we're seeking. But it doesn't do that. What it provides is actually a sense of discontent because you don't get what you're buying. So,
Eddie, Kalita's asking
Yep.
what the name of the movie was again.
for this particular movie or the other one? For this one, this movie was called Nymphomania. And the other movie was called Hurly Burly. So this is from the woman's perspective of trying to find happiness through sexual encounters. And the other is the one, Hurly Burly, by the men, encounters with fame, riches, all the other stuff, including sex. So what we need to do is like take our knowledge of this process, right, of how the senses are working and how your thinking is working, buying into the view of inherent existence, and go, okay, I look back over my life. There seems to be some semblance of truth about what Eddie's saying and how the Buddha is presenting it. Yeah. So what do I do in response to that? How can I use this new knowledge to prevent discontent, to have less discontent in the beginning at least, and then take part in different types of actions to actually end up having no discontent whatsoever. And remember, the discontent is not arising from the appearances. It's arising from the clinging of your own conceptions. Your own beliefs are the real problem, not the appearance. If you can't stop the appearance, it'll always be there until you're a Buddha.
So Eddie, there's kind of like 3 layers there, because at first we just think the discontent is because those guys aren't good enough.
Sure.
Then we come back a bit and go, oh, it's because the appearances are deceptive.
Yep.
But we still think the appearances are true. That's because biologically that's how they appear. So then we've got to take it back even further, isn't it?
Yeah. And this is like, why it was important last week to show that we are the creators. The mind itself is creating, but it creates the colors. It creates the sound. It creates the taste. It's coming back like from us. And if we don't exert some control over this process, well, it just keeps going. So what can we do? Here's some methods we can apply. So I've just put up like 5 of them, but we'll go through them like one at a time. So for the first one, it's just like, remember what you know. Yeah, in Buddhism, you've got this term called mindfulness. Be mindful. Well, this is what mindfulness means here. Remember what you know. Don't forget what you know. Second thing is, whenever you have an appearance arise, recognize the object of negation, which is inherent existence or existing from its own side, natural existence, all those different things, right? All those different terms. Right there, it's wonderful in a way. All the appearances are providing us with the object to be negated, because they all appear to be inherently existent. And so in terms of the world, that's great for us. We've got the object of negation appearing all the time. Whereas if you have to do it with yourself, then you need to put yourself in emotionally, get yourself in some sort of experience where your sense of I really pops up, But here we don't need to do that. We just need to open our eyes and there's the object. So it's very helpful in that way, because then we can start asking, we can do the analysis, right? Recognize your lack of control in the process. So this is coming back to like the first noble truth. We lack control. We're born into this life. The senses we have just provide us with everything appearing inherently existence. We can't do anything about it. What we can do is is decrease the clinging to the appearance to be true. But to do that, we have to actually recognize the object of negation and remember what we know. Here's a very simple thing you can do, is just withdraw your sense faculty. Meaning if you're looking at one thing and you find yourself becoming very attracted to it, and you'll know, okay, here's attachment coming up there because the object looks like it's got all those great qualities and I'm buying into it. Then if it's shoes, move your eyes off the shoes. Look away. It's the most simplest thing you can do. Just remove your senses from whatever the object is.
So that's like the attachment arises because of exposure, but often when we start getting really attached or craving, we just go and expose ourselves more.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's exactly right. That's what we do. That's why we want more, not less. That's it. There's a very simple thing we can do. In fact, if you ever got ordained, that's what they tell you to do. One of the first thing you do, they often see them like looking down. They're not wandering around like this with their eyes looking at everything. So they withdraw their senses from a whole lot of different objects. And many other people, of course, go into retreats. You have the Zen practitioners sitting up against the wall and just looking at a bare wall.
Kalita says, it's like going no contact after a breakup.
Yeah, that's dead right. That's a good example. No contact after the breakup. Yeah, that's right. Now, what else can you? Well, after you've withdrawn the sense faculty, replace it with another. Now, for us, what object would be really good for us to place it on? Can you think of something? This is a very simple answer here. Suppose we move our eyes off the shoes. Where could we put our eyes? What sort of sense object could we put it on that would decrease our discontent? Miffy, you're smiling and laughing. Have a go.
Oh, I'm just thinking the Buddha or a picture of His Holiness.
That's right. Pictures, Dharma texts. Put your eyes on those.
That's what when I was little and I'd have arguments with my mother, and in desperation she'd throw her hands up and she'd bring over this really beautiful photo of Lama Yeshe beaming, cuddling one of the little Kopan little monks.
Yeah.
And I couldn't help but smile.
Yeah. So there you go. So we could place our eye awareness, for instance, on pictures of our lamas, of our gurus, stupas, any sort of religious type of picture that suddenly brings across a different type of feeling. Or else we could open up a Dharma book and start reading. So that's another technique we could use. The other thing is offer the appearance. So I was saying this to Miffy the other day about offerings. I said, if you really think about this, your senses are providing the offerings already. They're coming back. But what we often do is we take them back. we see them, we grab them, we cling to them and go, that's mine. Oh, I like this and I don't like that. But here we could like offer it up to the guru. And here, I mean, guru from a couple of different perspectives. One, of course, you could be the external guru, but the major guru is the nature of mind itself. Give it back to the mind. It came from there. Relax. You could also offer anything you see that's wonderful, offer it to sentient beings. How wonderful it would be if all beings could see this, could rejoice in it. May they find a sense of well-being in the world, where they meet up with wonderful sights. So we can use it as an offering. This is in terms of the method. Now, the next thing I'm going to use here is sort of like method and wisdom combined, but it's really sort of leading into the wisdom side of it. And that, of course, is the king of reasons called dependent arising. So like I said before, if it exists, it does so dependently. I challenge you to find anything that could exist without any type of dependence. when you don't find anything, you can take this to be the truth. It's honest. Then I'll ask you to find anything that could exist opposite to dependent, which is inherent. If you find anything that could inherently exist, you know this is not true. Dependent arising is not true because I found something that could inherently exist. And if you find that you cannot find anything that does not dependently arise, you can also go that inherently existence is false. It appears, but it's not true. So here's some things I've used, right? So color does not truly exist. But why? Because the way color exists and the way color appears to exist are different. So it's not true. So I've put up these 4 here on the one side. I know there's a lot of text, but if we do them one at a time, it's easier. And also that if you ever need to remember this, you quickly go online, find the slide and go, I'll write it down or I'll keep it somewhere. Color does not exist from the side of the basis of designation. Why not? Because it is not there when searched for among the basis for designation. So what do we mean by basis of designation? It's just the parts that contain the color. So if it's a leaf, we can say, okay, the green color does not exist from the side of the leaf. Why not? Because when I search in the leaf for the color, it's not there. Now take persons. A person does not exist from the side of the basis of designation. What is the basis of designation for person?
Body and mind.
Yes, well, the aggregates, isn't it? Body and mind. That's the basis for the person, right? You look within that basis, the body and mind, for a person, they're not there. There's no person found there. That's why they don't exist from that side. So we go, it's true. Color does not exist by way of its own character. Why? Because color depends on imputation. So there's no color without the name of color. I mean, color, what we call color appears, but if you go, what color is that? There's no saying unless you name it. Right, so it doesn't have its own character. In fact, just like Miffy said, she gave the example of painting the room the spotty yellow. When we first looked at it, it seemed to have its own character. It looked like that. Great, that's the character we want on our walls. We go and put it up. It's not. It's like, what happened? Well, color just doesn't exist like that. Over here, it looks like this. In a small swatch, it looks like this. It looks like that's what we want. When you go put it up on a wall in a big color, it's not what we want. Right?
And if you have all 4 walls reflecting each other, amplifying the intensity of the color,
Yeah,
it's a big shock.
you're big shock. You can use this any type of object, these 4 reasons, but reasons of dependent arising. You can use it on your own skin, your body, the sky, the earth, no matter what it is. That's why these are tremendous reasons. Miffy.
Eddie, it also strikes me that trying to pick a color for your wall is one of the most stressful things. Whole marriages break up over this because you can pick the right color and like it's got the the numbers and things right there from the catalog, and it's just not that color once it's on your wall.
No, that's
so
right.
It's probably so stressful because there's all of this behind it.
Well, that's right. So what's all behind us is the opposite of all this. Yeah. So for the people who do that, well, color does truly exist. It looks like this, right? Well, it looks like on the catalog. That's what it looks like, right? You go, yeah. You put it on the wall, and it doesn't look like that.
And it's your fault.
That's whose fault's that? That's right. It's somebody's fault.
It's not my fault.
That's what I say. It's not my fault. And finally, Color does not inherently exist because it exists dependently. Everything, anything that does exist, does so dependently. So imagine if you, like I said, remember that, how many arguments would fall away, how many disagreements, how many feelings of discontent would just drop. Now here's another wisdom now. So applying wisdom. So color is empty. If it's dependent, it is empty. It's empty of intrinsic existence, what dependent arising refutes. Dependence refutes inherent existence. So color, being dependent, is empty of inherent existence. And here we're talking about the ultimate truth, the ultimate way of being of color. It's empty of inherent existence. So the ultimate truth about color. So emptiness is color. Now, what makes this difficult to get your head around is the focus is on emptiness. In fact, it should be on color. So in other words, color is a dependent arising. At the top, we looked at the ultimate truth. The next three profundities deal with the conventional nature of this object, color. It's a subtle dependent relationship, not the gross, the subtle. And this part's actually harder to get your head around than the first one. So emptiness emptiness of color is the color. Emptiness here is affirmed as a dependent origination. As I said, we're on the conventional grounds now. So emptiness is not other than color, means that the conventional nature and the ultimate nature of the phenomena called color are the same entity. For instance, or for example, the color of your own body and the body itself are an example of two phenomena that are not identical, but they are the same entity.
So is another way of saying this that they might appear contradictory, but they're not, or they might appear different, but they're like the two sides of the same coin.
They can, well, that leads us to the next slide, right? Which is this. So remember, this is all conventional. Color is also not other than the emptiness. Yet color, which is a conventional truth, and emptiness, which is an ultimate truth. These two can be distinguished from one another. We can talk about the empty nature of color, and we can also talk about the color. So they're, but they're not completely different things. And this is what the third one's getting at. The dependent origination of the color is nothing other than the color. And the color itself is not other than the emptiness of inherent existence of color. So they're a single entity, but we can talk about them as if they're two different things. Like we can talk about your body, Kath, and we can talk about the color of your body. We can talk about the shape of my body, all the different parts of my body, and we can also talk about the color. And they're different, aren't they? Two different things we're talking about. But in how they exist, they're not different. They're one entity. Okay.
My mind is getting a bit tired now, Eddie.
Yeah, that's right. Well, that's exactly right. So we better come back to like a method again, hadn't we? How do we apply this, for instance? Yeah. So when outwardly, all these appearances, right? Relax. Relax. Right? Don't buy into it and cling that everything is true to you. So that's the external world. And secondly, it's like inwardly, coming back to your body, relax again. Don't cling to your body as being true. And thirdly, don't cling to the ideas you have. Now, this will come up more in our next class. The names you give to the appearances, the ideas you have about the appearances, they're not true. Remember, they're not true. They're imputed to these colors, to these appearances. So they don't truly exist. Relax. Don't cling to your ideas.
Anne says, applying wisdom slide process seems like a very hard algebra problem from my senior year too long ago.
Well, it's like, what's his name? I think Shanti Davis says, I think, like it gets easier with familiarization.
If only the algebra problems were as useful as this is.
Now, this last one is the method of using this information. Right? So tighten with intensity just means remember. Remember what you know. Right? And then relax. So so to combine all this together, we have these terms that some of you are familiar with, where they talk about, look at things as if they are just like illusions. So it's an illusion that things inherently exist, yet they appear to. That's the illusion, right? If you buy into it, you get lost. So here, I've given you an illusion. Right? So just look at this. Now, I want a couple of people to say what they're seeing there. So would anybody just like to tell me, what are you looking at? This bar in the middle here, what's that look like?
Lighter going to darker.
Thank you, Sue. Anyone else? Does anyone see that different? It seems to be, from my way of looking at it, on the left-hand side, it's light. And as you go across the other side, it's dark. Does it appear any different to anybody else?
Anne says a rectangle.
Okay, it's right, a rectangle. And how's the rectangle colored? Does it go from light to dark? Does that appear different to you?
Yeah, well, one looks like it goes light to dark, and then the larger rectangle looks like it goes dark to light, the background.
Okay. So I'm going to show you this. So look, to me, it looks light from the left, light to dark. And when I put this up, I actually stood up and went around and tried to look at it from different sides of the computer. This, like, whoa, what's it look like? No, go over this side. No, it still looks the same.
Anne says, I can see the shades now. Gray, yes, different shades.
Excellent. That's right. Good. Yeah, it's shaded, going from lighter to darker. That's what it looks like, doesn't it? You want to see what it actually looks like? What it really looks like? Because this is an illusion. We're engaged in an illusion right now. This is what it looks like. That's how it actually looks like.
What? Do it again.
What makes it look different? Well, the background. It's the background that actually changes, not the foreground.
Do it again, please.
No, I didn't. I was going forwards and backwards, forwards and backwards. Wow, look at that. Whoops. And sometimes you can actually see it go. Ooh. That's how it actually exists. And this is how it's appearing to exist.
So if you just leave that slide up, Eddie, and if everyone puts their fingers up horizontally, so you kind of get rid of the background and all
Oh,
you can
right.
see.
Yeah, that's right. Now it's there. That's
You
there,
can see
right.
the change.
Sure. That's right. You black. That's right. I can see that. It's exactly the same color.
So, I mean, this is just like tickling my brain, because here it is. There's a dependent arising from the background changes the foreground. And yet it looks real.
Yeah, that's right. And we can't stop it. Right? While that background is there, it always comes this way to us. It cannot not. Now, this is the same, like I said, this is an example of the illusion of inherent existence, where in fact there is none. So just as it seems that if this is actually shaded, in fact, it's not. Right? So just as phenomena appear to have inherent existence, in fact, they don't. It's the same idea. Now, I hope that's been fun for you. So what can we take away from this? Well, firstly, I hope that you can, because your eyes are often open, then remind yourself, wow, all this, that I seem to be separate from it, the colors seem to be over there. That is inherent existence. The objects appear to possess their properties. The object and the property are one and the same. That's the object to be negated. And so now you can bring wisdom to every appearance that you have. Anything that appears to your eyes, you can bring wisdom to it. And in terms of the method, remember, colors are sources of joy. So instead of clinging to them, offer them. don't go grabbing. Right? So here we could practice, the simple practice of generosity, and not only that, but to let go of the clinging, which is the idea behind the offering of the mandala, is to let go of the clinging. We offer the whole world up, which we've brought into existence. Okay, so we've had a look at perception as being either a source of discontent or it could aid our practice. And it's up to us to choose. So this is something you might be able to do during the week. I've had a look at these pretty much interesting illusions you can have a look at. I'll blow your mind. They're quite fun. And you can see how your mind keeps tricking you, how your brain keeps tricking you. And I said, so next week we'll look at the conceptual mind, what its process is, what its purpose is in terms of function and so forth. And there we'll take that information on the fourth class and look at how can I use this information to decrease discontent and increase a state of contentment. So I hope this has been useful to you, that you've enjoyed the class, that you can take something away from it. And so once again, thank you for being here. Without you here, then I wouldn't be investigating like this and enjoying myself so much. That's for sure. Now I've got a couple of prayers to come up, so I'm just going to stop the share here, and then we'll say the prayers together.
Give everyone a chance if they've got any questions.
Oh yes, okay. So I can't do that, can I? I can't put the things up all together. But do you have any questions at the end here? Let's do that first. Any questions anyone would like to ask?
I'm just going to make my apologies. I have to scoot, and I'll save my questions for next time. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Or
over.
Email the questions in.
Yep. Excellent. Okay. Anybody like that?
Oh, geez, I gotta go too.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye, Andy.
I gotta go.
Yep.
Okay, we better do the dedication then.
Yes, we had. Where am I?
Oh, hang on.
Yanni, do you have a question? Okay.
Is she done? Yes, so she's gone. She's there.
It was delightful. I laughed so hard. I just loved the delivery, and yeah, very entertaining. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Let's go back here and we'll go. So let's dedicate our enjoyment, our learnings towards becoming enlightened for the benefit of others. So due to the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. May the supreme jewel bodhicitta, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline but increase forevermore. Thank you, everyone. Enjoyed your company. Hope to see you next week.
Thanks, Eddie.
Bye-bye.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Eddie. Thank you.
Thank you, Eddie.